I'm Thomas DeFrantz, and I'm here to talk to the directors of the evening of performance, A Bird's Eye View, here at DCDC in October of 2019. We're in the midst of the run, Bird's Eye View, two works made by Donald Byrd that have been remounted on the company this year, and taking a moment to really take the temperature of your collaboration, talk a bit about Mr. Byrd's work within the Dayton community and at DCDC, and also maybe set a little bit of a pathway for future artists to understand how this collaboration has evolved and what your concerns are right now in 2019.
I have been wanting to do this particular program for a bit. I originally had scheduled it for 2 seasons ago and couldn't make it happen. And so I was elated when I called Mr. Byrd over the summer and asked him if you were interested in coming and presenting the pieces that we're presenting in this particular format. The format is different because I have invited not only Mr. Byrd, but you, Tommy, to do conversations with the audience in front of the audience. And I think that is a different entry point to dance. You usually come to theater, you sit and you wait till the curtain goes up, and then the show happens, and then the show is over. And I think sometimes people, especially with modern contemporary dance, because it's sort of still a new genre, it's less than 100 years old, that they walk away sometimes feeling, I didn't understand it, I didn't get it, what did I miss? And lots of times you don't miss anything because the artist created for you to take away from it what you want to take away from it. But I thought it would be very interesting to have Mr. Byrd come and talk about his work. He said his first piece for our company in 1989, and I had just gotten married and I left the company. And so I came back and they were rehearsing and I'm like, oh man, I really left 4 months too early. And so I've never, as a dancer artist, gotten to perform his work, but have always really marveled in how he puts work together. The process of your work, for me, is as interesting as the final product that goes on stage. And so even as a crafter in my own right as a choreographer, I have taken some of the ways, the pathways that you take to get to your work because I think it's fascinating. And I also am elated that we are in the celebration of your 70th year. I think it couldn't have fallen at a better time. And I think the Dayton audiences are prime to start to learn about dance on a layered level. And so that's why I asked you to come and do this, and you said yes, no problem, and I'm just really happy to have you here.
Great. I'm glad to be here too.
Thank you.
Again.
Well,
yes.
Let's think about that together, Donald. Why Dayton? What is it that DCDC represents for you?
Well, one of the remarkable things when I first came, when Geraldine Blunden was still alive, who was the founder, and the environment that she created was unlike anything I had experienced as a choreographer. You walked into the space, and what was in the space was, what do you need to make the work? So there was no bartering or begging, no, I need this, okay, we'll get that. And so in some ways I felt liberated to create the work. And so coming back here each time I've been back, what is this, 5?
This is the 5th time.
5th time, 5 times. It's not the same as the first time, but the underlying principle of the idea is always the same. It is always about the work, not about personalities or that kind of stuff. So it's only in my experiences as a choreographer in multiple venues, in multiple states, in multiple countries, in multiple companies, that's new and unique, and it has stayed that way, and it still only in many ways exists here.
Then we move to the 2 works that are featured in this weekend's performances, the Jacob Lauren Paint Harriet Tubman remix. And this work, It fits into a part of your catalog, Donald, where you think through historical figures but reimagine them into a different kind of landscape that helps us remember back aspects of our shared history, but also imagine it forward into a kind of dream time or dreamscape. Can you say a little bit about what you're up to in making this work?
I will say that often what I am doing is I'm problem solving for myself. I set up some things, some positions or something that together they create a problem, and then I'm trying to solve the problem of it, and trying to maintain while maintaining the integrity of the components that make it up, the different elements. The Jacob Lawrence piece. The thing was that the problem that was presented to me was take something from one of the images or take one of the paintings or several of the paintings from Jacob Lawrence's work and then create a piece inspired by that. So that was the problem that was presented to me by DCDC, do that. And then the problem that I was the challenge of which paintings, which ones resonate for me. The ones that resonated for me, the most ended up being the Harriet Tubman series and the migration ones, and so they kind of morphed into one set in some ways. And then also the problem was that I knew that I wanted to use Sherry, and so the Harriet Tubman, that was perfect for Sherry, I thought. So those are the kinds of challenges actually in both of the pieces they're the external ones, the ones that are imposed that comes along with doing the project, and then the ones that solving the problem. So the problems for me, how do you take something that's static and flat and give it three-dimensionality? I think that's really what I'm doing, is trying to solve those problems. Like, I actually don't make any assessments about whether it's good or not. I'm just trying to solve the problem. Sometimes I'm relieved that I can solve the problem, like, whew, And so then sometimes when that happens, I'm often surprised by other people's response to it, because sometimes I want them to go, yeah, you solved the problem, but they are looking at something completely different. And so geography of the Cottonfield, the problem with that one for me, that the challenge that was presented for me with that was like, I wasn't clear about what I wanted to do when I arrived. But one of the things I've learned over time, just from experience, is that I will come up with something because I've done it before. So don't fret, just keep yourself open and wait, to see what occurs to you or what you see. And what I saw heard was a question from an audience member about when we were showing something in the studio. And Debbie probably can speak to that, but we were showing something in the studio, and they said something to me that kind of, they asked a question that triggered something, a response. And so that's how the piece became.
And Debbie, what is it that you appreciate when Donald Byrd is able to be here with you and the company? Like, what do you appreciate about it?
His presence, his wisdom, his lifetime of experience in his own work, in his work with other companies. But I have to respond. It's really funny that you said that you didn't know what you were doing with geography when you got here. And after Mr. Byrd had been here, I don't know, for about 7 days, and we were coming up on the time for him to leave.
7 days.
No, it was 7 days, and I came to you and I said, Mr. Byrd, we only have like 4 more days of rehearsal. Are we going to have a piece? And he's like, yeah, we're going to have a piece. And at the end of those 4 days, the whole structure and format of the blueprint fell into place, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So what I learned from that specific experience is you had, those things were working for you in your head. It had not revealed itself on the floor. We were still working in pieces and pockets and pieces and pockets. And then probably 2 days before it was time for you to leave it with us, there was this whole 39-minute work that I think is magical. And the gentleman in the up close and personal, we give our sponsors and subscribers a personal experience in the studio where they can actually watch us work. The gentleman said to him, well, what are they doing? Are they picking cotton? And my response was physical and visceral, and he just kind of put his hand up. He saw me react that way, and he's like, oh. And he gave this gentleman this wonderful explanation, but out of it grew the title of the piece, The Geography of the Cottonfield.
What do they call it? I have an obsessive personality, and so I will obsess on something. And so if I go like, what do we got here? What are we doing? And so like I'm thinking about it all the time. I can't sleep. I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm processing, what does all this stuff mean that I've been seeing in the studio and what's going on? How does it all kind of work together? And that is really painful for me. I mean, really, it's like, it's emotionally painful. There's a lot of discomfort because it's kind of being presented with a lot of options or possibilities, and somehow none of it is making any sense, and I'm trying to make sense out of all. And then one day, then something will happen, and then everything will fall into place for me. Then I know exactly what I need to do. And then it can be completed usually in a pretty short amount of time then. Because I've put a lot of stuff out there. So all it needs to go like, why does it belong together? How does it belong together? Sometimes I talk to young choreographers about is this notion that you haven't composed the work yet. You have the building blocks for it, but you haven't composed it. It still needs to be composed. It needs structure. It needs architecture.
What do you want Donald, and then Debbie, please, what do you want the audience, there's not one thing you want the audience to know or learn by seeing art, but what's something you hope that audiences will actually be able to take with them as they see either of these pieces?
Well, I think with this particular program and these performances and what I've seen since I've been here, aside from the choreographic thing, part of it is how magnificent the dancers are and how committed they are. To me, that's remarkable, because my favorite kind of dance performance is when the choreography disappears and I'm only looking at people dancing. Like the choreography just gives you some parameters, but ideally what it should be doing is opening up a space for you to dance. I mean, I don't think these pieces were designed to challenge them in another kind of way, which sometimes my work does. I don't think they were designed to do that. That's not what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to deal with those, confront or embrace those problems, those challenges that I saw. But I think the idea of appreciating the dancers and this notion of thinking of choreography as an opportunity for people to dance, it gives them something to do. And in a way that is contained and that they can be appreciated. And actually last night, a young woman said something to me. She goes, oh, I really loved it. It was so fantastic. And she goes, and they're not doing the same thing, like so much of the routines you see on TV now. They're just doing the same thing over and over and over again, But they were dancing all kinds of stuff. And so to me, that was a great compliment.
Thank you so much. Debbie?
I think I want, as always, our audience to embrace us. We're in year 51, as we started this conversation about, and so I think that gives us an institutional status. Once you've been around this long, you get to call yourself a cultural institution. And so I want the audience to embrace that. I want the audience to, as Mr. Byrd said, really see the work that these dancers are doing. I think dancers are some of the most spectacular athletes in the world, and I think Mr. Byrd's work brings that out. But I also, for our Dayton audience specifically, I want them to own and be proud of us. Geraldine rooted this company in Dayton, Ohio over 50 years ago on purpose. She wanted it to be here. She wanted a company like this to exist, not in a coastal city. So I'm really proud of the work that we do and the artists that we bring in to help us do that work. And so I want I want Dayton and this community and the world to know that DCDC is here to stay. My plan is for it to be here a very long time.
Well, that's our plan as well, and I thank you both so much. Thank you.
Thank you.